So the keel was laid on the North Carolina in 1937 in the Brooklyn Naval Shipyard, and construction lasted about 4 years until the ship was commissioned in April of 1941 and put into active service. The Washington followed shortly thereafter. So the North Carolina was operating on the East Coast in and out of port, working up its crew and working out the systems on board when World War II commenced in December of '41 for the United States. So the ship operated, the North Carolina operated on the East Coast for about the first 6 months of the war, and then the decision was made to move the ship over to the Pacific Theater for operations against the Japanese Navy there. So after the war was over, the North Carolina, along with other ships, quickly evacuated thousands, hundreds of thousands of military troops from the Pacific Theater back to the United States in an operation called Magic Carpet Ride, where all these troops that were all over the Pacific region, not all of them, but many of them were able to go home at that point. The North Carolina left in September of '45 to head back and take some people ashore, and took its new home port in Boston and served there until 1947 when it was decommissioned. So following decommissioning, the North Carolina was put into mothballs or reserve fleet in case it needed to be activated again. In 1960, the U.S. Navy decided it didn't need fast battleships anymore, and so they were planning to scrap the North Carolina, and the state of North Carolina stepped in and said, we would like to bring the North Carolina to Wilmington as a museum ship. So millions of people in North Carolina, including school children, donated their dimes and dollars and anything they could to help bring the North Carolina back here. So that happened in 1961, and the North Carolina has been here, birthed in Wilmington, since 1961. So that's a brief history of the North Carolina. During the war, it served in every major Pacific campaign and earned 15 battle stars. So what we're going to do today, we're going to spend some time talking aboard the ship about the Navy discipline system in effect at that time. And we're going to take a look at some of the spaces around the ship that had to do with the discipline system on board the North Carolina, including the brig. So if you're ready, let's head aboard ship and take a look at the brig aboard the North Carolina. Welcome to the Battleship North Carolina. I'm Chuck Gore, one of the volunteers on the ship, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit today about the brig and the naval justice system aboard the Battleship North Carolina. So we're in the ship's brig right now, which was our jail. We're on the third deck, 2 decks below the main deck, on the after portion of the ship behind the turret number 3. So in the brig here, we've got accommodations for anywhere from 15 to 20 people, depending on whether the prisoners were in solitary confinement or grouped together, and one of the bunk rooms here has accommodations for 4 to 6. So as you can see from the footage, there's pretty Spartan conditions in here. We've taken everything out now, but when the brig was in service, there would be a bunk or 2 or maybe 4 in each one of these compartments, and the prisoners would be confined in each one of their cells. The brig was staffed by the Marine Corps contingent on the battleship. We had a Marine Corps detachment on board of about 85 Marines, and one of their duties was to maintain the brig. So when there were people in here, the Marine Corps staff was the ones that were responsible for caretaking them. People often ask, well, why did people get confined in the brig? What did they have to do to get confined in the brig? We have accurate records of people being confined and disciplined aboard the ship. And some of the reasons that people were found guilty and sentenced to the brig would have been fighting, stealing, refusal to obey a lawful order, leaving a watch station early, absence without leave, or unauthorized absence, as we call the Navy, UA. A big one would have been missing ship's movement. When the ship is getting underway, we need everybody on board. So if somebody missed movement and missed the ship getting underway, that would be a major offense and probably worth some brig time itself. In World War II, the captain had pretty significant power over the crew as far as justice was concerned. So when they were confined to the brig, there were some offenses that were more serious, and so they were being longer and on bread and water. Other times, they might have been in for a shorter period, say 3 days. Now, for very serious offenses such as murder or desertion, the captain might want to see about a more serious sentence, and he could award a court-martial to the person that was charged under the articles of regulation of the war that were in effect in World War II. So we're in the captain's quarters of the Battleship North Carolina right now, and this is a space where captain's mast or non-judicial punishment probably was held during World War II. So if a sailor was charged with an offense, he would have been put on report, and the paperwork would work its way through the chain of command, through the chief master at arms, through the executive officer, and if they felt like it needed to be referred to the captain for adjudication, then the sailor would be awarded captain's mast, and that hearing would have been held in here. And as I mentioned earlier, captain's mast is like a one-on-one. It's the captain and the accused, and there's various supporting members around who might be talking about the details of the offense or speaking on behalf of the sailor that's being charged. So after a brief period of, 10 or 15 minutes, the captain would make his decision as to the punishment, and it might be something as light as extra duty, a couple of hours of extra work after hours. It might be reduction in rate, it might be a fine, it might be break time, and it might be a court-martial offense, in which case the captain would refer it to a higher court-martial hearing at that time. And once the captain awarded a punishment, there was no appeal. His word was law aboard the ship, so there was no chance for the sailor to appeal it at captain's mast. If he went to a court-martial, that could be appealed down the road, but the final say was the captain's here in this particular venue.